region, started by Bob Garrett in 1986 around his kitchen table, because they saw the spread of overdevelopment in the Sourlands, and they decided that they needed to do something about it. So a lot of folks don't really know much about the Sourlands at all. So the Sourlands is a 90 square mile area in central New Jersey, and it's the largest contiguous forest in central New Jersey. And it is within Mercer County, Hunterdon County, and Somerset County. And it's really unique area, and a lot of that has to do with the diabase rock that defines this region. And if you look at the map, you can see all these perch wetlands up here. And that's just because it takes so long for the water to drain through that diabase rock. So we have a really unique characteristics here with our topography and the plant and animal communities that live here. So the mission of the Sourland Conservancy is to protect, promote, preserve the unique character of the Sourland Mountain region. And we do this through a couple of different ways. So we protect the region's ecology through stewardship activities and through defending from overdevelopment, or demise. We promote best practices, and we do a lot of educational programs, preserve with our advocacy program, and there's also a lot of rich history in the Sourlands, and so all of that is worth saving and protecting. And so when we think about our resources, it's not necessarily just about our physical resources, but it's also about the history and the culture of this region. The values of the Sourland Conservancy are inclusivity, because it's really important that the people that live here are involved in taking care of the land, because when you feel that this land is yours and you are part of this community, you're going to do everything that you can to protect it and to save it. Knowledge. If you understand the world around you, that it's not just trees, but these are your trees, these are, you know, your red oaks and shagbark hickories and your shad bushes, and they're your actual community, and you understand not only the plants and the interactions between them and the birds and the mammals and the insects. Again, it brings you in and makes you have skin in the game, because we all do. But a lot of times, if you don't have the knowledge and the understanding of how we're all connected, you know, it's hard to invest yourself in protecting the land. Respect. And, you know, when we go and we work with the public, you know, for the most part, we really don't want to call people out. We want to call them in. We want to have a conversation, and we want to educate people. We want to make this community strong by having those conversations. Sometimes they're not really fun conversations or topics that get really heated, like deer management, but having respectful conversations with the public and with stakeholders is really important to continue our collaboration and working forward on really important initiatives. And diversity. Diversity is really important for our biodiversity of our planet, and as well as our communities that we live in, because different voices bring different experiences to the table, and we can all learn from each other. So the history of the Sourland Mountain region: Native Americans lived here for thousands of years. And then the English came in and the Dutch came in, and then it became an area for refugee slaves, or escaped slaves rather, and they found refuge in the Sourlands. And then it became a really notorious era because of Lindbergh kidnapping, where everybody knew about the Sourlands very briefly and for very sad reasons. But there is a really rich history here, and a lot of times, you know, that rich history is not necessarily shared. And so that's something that's really important to the Sourland Conservancy, is that we share and we amplify the stories of, you know, of people that weren't always had their voice listened to. And what's so special about the Sourlands clean water, air, and soil. The Sourlands is a carbon sequestration powerhouse. The Sourlands provide critical habitat for many, many bird and animal species, other animal species. It has a very rich history. There's a lot of agriculture in this area and recreation. In the Sourlands alone, there are 26 public preserves with hiking trails. It's a really small area. Most people think of the Sourlands, they think of the one preserve in Somerset County, the Sourland Mountain Preserve, but they don't realize that there are so many different trails here in the Sourlands. And I have been on all of them, and they're all so different, and they have different characteristics. So if you want to go to a meadow, or if you want to go do some big hills and get some elevation in, or you just want to meander quietly alongside a stream, I mean, we have it all. It's a really wonderful place to get out and hike. So if you haven't been out on our trails, definitely, well, not our trails, the trails of the Sourlands, make sure you get out and see it. It's a really beautiful area. So the Sourlands have clean water. From Sourland streams, 19 headwaters form the Sourland stream. So it's a really important water resource for folks downstream, because remember, everything goes downstream. So we start at the top of the mountain, and that water flows down into the Delaware and Raritan River and provides drinking water for millions and millions of people. It also provides critical habitat for birds that would nest alongside stream banks, because a lot of birds feed on aquatic macroinvertebrates, which are the insects that have their larval stage inside the stream. Not all have their larval stream, but most of them have their larval stage in the stream. So we're thinking like dragonflies, damselflies, hellgrammites, all of those are important food resources for birds and for mammals. And you need to have clean water to have a really healthy and diverse aquatic macroinvertebrate community. So again, clean water is so important. And the Sourlands also provides habitat for many, many migratory birds, a lot of species of Lepidoptera, butterflies and moths. And it's a home to 57 state-listed threatened and endangered plant and animal species. This area is really, really important, and it's really worth protecting. And sometimes you might find dinosaurs in the Sourlands when you're hiking around. Very important habitat for them too. So this area is really important for so many different reasons, but there's a lot of threats to the Sourlands right now. One of it is overdevelopment. Another thing that is really, really critical is the overpopulation of white-tailed deer. So in some areas of the Sourlands, it's 10 times the carrying capacity or the sustainable limit for deer. Other areas, it's 12 times. You know, and white-tailed deer are native. It's, you know, they're part of our ecosystem, but when there is too many deer in an area, they eat all of the woody plants and all the herbaceous plants too. And then when, like what Juanita was saying, when we have these forest canopy gaps, there's nothing to come in there and take the big trees' place. So it causes a really big problem. Pollution is another issue. Climate change, invasive plants, insects. There's a lot of things going on in the Sourlands. And so it's really critical to protect it, especially also because the carbon sequestration power of the Sourlands is huge. So if you look at this map here, you can see right in the middle, that little rectangular slip, that's the Sourlands. So you can see that the New Jersey highlands and the pinelands are also really great carbon sinks, but then the Sourlands is right there holding its own. And that's, you know, a lot to do with our mature forest. So, you know, we're in trouble because over 1 million ash trees are going to die in the next few years. And to give you some context of what that looks like, in the Sourlands, in parts of the Sourlands, it's only maybe about 20% of the canopy, which is still a lot of trees. But in other areas, down at Baldpate, where Juanita was talking about with as an important birding area, a bird area, the canopy can be up to 70%. And that is just going to be absolutely devastating for a lot of reasons. So again, you can look at the distribution of ash trees right in that middle slide right there. We have a very, very high level, high density of ash here in the Sourlands. So a few years ago, I don't think people were very much aware about what was going on with our ash trees. It was at the end of 2019, we started getting a few trickles in here and there from Facebook and email saying, hey, what's going on with my tree? You know, they would send us pictures of blonding, which is in the middle picture, and also a picture on the left. And that's where woodpeckers are taking off the bark and trying to eat the emerging emerald ash borers. But they would see this all over the place and they're like, what's going on? But now people have stopped asking the question because we all know what's happening. And it's absolutely devastating. And it's really hard to wrap your head around that all of these trees are dying. And so when you go out into a forest and, you know, the area once had a really dense canopy, it provided a lot of shade down to the understory. And some of the invasives like Japanese stilt grass, you know, it would compete a little bit, but didn't have that much of an edge. But once we lose our canopy, a lot of the invasive species are able to outcompete our native species because of the multitude of factors of being released from predation or disease or competition, because a lot of our native plants are being eaten by our native white-tailed deer. And so they have a preference to eat our native plants. A lot of those non-native plants are just able to reproduce and reproduce. And, you know, it becomes this very dense thicket of Japanese stilt grass, multiflora rose, Japanese barberry. And that in of itself makes a super dense shade that a lot of seedlings aren't able to germinate because they don't have almost any light, or they can't, as soon as they get up through those invasives, they get eaten by the white-tailed deer. So, you know, we have to do something because the future of the forest is up to us right now. You know, saplings and young trees, these smaller trees, are what become our canopy trees. And if all of those trees are gone because of high deer pressure and development, and then losing our trees from the emerald ash borer, when those big trees die, there's nothing there to take its place. So we are working really, really hard with a bunch of partners to save the Sourland Forest. And we're hitting it in all different ways. So we're doing partner projects where we're partnering with other public landowners to do big group plantings. We also have interns that are going out and just planting like wild, all over the place, tons and tons of trees. We have an ACT program, which is a program for homeowners to participate, and our Roots program, which is new this year, that's coming out this winter, which is another initiative for homeowners to get involved on their own land. So let's get into what we're doing about the forest. So we received a grant from One Tree Planted, and what we have done with this grant fund is partner with other local nonprofit organizations, municipalities, and county park systems to plant as many trees as we can in areas that are prioritized because of ash loss, or that they're really important habitat for rare and threatened endangered species that are part of the Change Corridor. Change is connecting habitat across New Jersey. And these areas are targeted because these are areas that animals are migrating through. And so we want to make sure that there's canopy cover there for them, and riparian areas, because water quality and clean water is so important. So with our group planting projects, we're partnering with Mercer County Park Commission. We're doing 2 different plantings with them on bald pate. We partnered with DNR Greenway at the Ecosystem Preserve, Montgomery Township. We have 2 plantings with them, one at Rock Mill Preserve and one at Flusiac. And we're also working with New Jersey Conservation Foundation at Rainbow Hill in the Sourlands. So we have already done 2 of these plantings, but the other 3 are all about to happen. So if you want to get your hands dirty, send me an email. I will send you the registration link, because we are putting in these partner projects 5,000 trees in the ground between the beginning of October and mid-November. We also have interns that are planting trees for us, and they're just, my interns are planting about 5,000 to 6,000 trees this fall, or this year. We had a set of interns in the spring. This is Tyler and Robert. Mike Van Clough is not my intern. I would not be that lucky, but he has been a wonderful resource with us. He's been going out and doing site walks. These are our interns right now, Kelsey, Lilly, and Will, and they have been getting their hands real dirty and going out and planting. So you can see Kelsey is the woman in the overall. She's in the riparian area. This area was chosen because it's a change corridor in a riparian area. This is in Montgomery, Skillman, and she's out there planting trees. And Lily and Will, you can see all the dead ash around them and all that stilt grass. It's almost chest high. And they're out there too, planting as many trees as they can. This picture here is over on Bald Pate, near the Pleasant Valley parking lot. So if you go and take a walk over there, those are trees that our interns planted. So the picture on the left, the before picture, you can see there are some trees in there, but there is no understory. There is no shrubs. And a lot of that's because of the deer. So my interns were in there planting primarily shrub species, and also a couple more tree species. That most of the trees here were there was maybe 2 or 3 different species. So we wanted to add a little bit more diversity, not just in the shrub layer, but also in the canopy layer. And we're using different types of deer protection depending on the site needs. So in riparian areas, we're using tree tubes. And I know those tree tubes look a little old, but that's because they're reused tubes. We're also partnering with the Nature Conservancy. So when they pull tubes off of their trees, we go and pick them up and we put them on our trees. We're really trying to reduce the amount of plastic that we use. So we keep reusing tubes as much as we can. And then when we need new tubes, we'll buy new tubes. But, you know, when we're working in conservation, we want to be as mindful as we can about creating garbage when we're trying to save our planet. So reduce, reuse, and recycle. So we also use individual tree cages. So that's what Tyler was doing right there. He was putting an individual cage around a tree. And then in the last picture, we are also installing groves. So groves are areas that are have a 10 by 10 foot diameter. And what they do, which is different than the other 2 methods, is that they also help the herbaceous layer, because especially in tree tubes, you know, you can't really have many herbaceous plants growing in those tubes because the openings may be about this big. And the tree cages, individual cages, you can still have some, a little bit of herbaceous growth in there, but in our groves, you really get to protect that herbaceous layer from deer herbivory and give them a chance to establish. You know, each method of deer protection has its benefits and its drawbacks. So we try to use a mix of things. And choose the most appropriate method depending on the site and our goal at that site. With our interns, they're planting 33 different woody species. They're planting 19 different species of shrubs, 14 species of trees. Some of the species that they're planting are alder, shadbush, 3 different species of dogwood, the gray, silky, and red osier dogwood, 2 different species of hollies, 4 species of oaks, 2 species of willow, lots and lots and lots of spice bush all over the place. Shagbark hickory, tulip poplar, just, we have a big range of plants and plant types because biodiversity is so important. And so, when we're going to reforest an area, some folks get confused and they think that we're planting ash trees, and we are not planting ash trees. The ash that are here now are going to die. And there's not really any point in planting ash, but we can plant other species so that if, say, in 10 years, the smooth alder blight comes in, we won't have 70% canopy of smooth alder. We'll have a little bit of red alder. We'll have a little bit of shagbark hickory and black gum and sumac and all these different species, so that if something happens, and something will happen, the whole forest won't be affected in the same way that it is now when having such dense stands of one species. We're planting both riparian and upland areas. We have a big focus on woody species that host lepidopteran species, and a focus on woody species that provide fruit resources for birds. Our ash crisis team is where homeowners can make a really big difference. So 1/3 of the Sourlands is privately owned, and that's a lot of land. And so we really want to encourage homeowners to plant native trees and shrubs to support their ecosystem that they're part of. And we're doing this by providing trees and protection at a really low and affordable cost. And you're also able to donate a tree kit. So if somebody's not able to afford the cost of the tree kit, they can get one for free. So we actually just opened up our axe sale on Friday. So I'm going to do a little promotion right now. This fall, we're doing biodiversity kits. So last year we would sell maybe 4 different types of species at the same time. And we found that a lot of people bought all of one species. So they would buy 4 or 5 sweet bay magnolias, or they would buy just a bunch of shadbush. And our goal is, yes, plant native trees. Please plant as many native trees as you can, but also please plant different ones. Don't plant just one species. So we are forcing the matter by making a biodiversity kit where you buy the kit and you get 4 woody plants. You get 2 trees and 2 shrubs. So it's a white oaks, because we know white oaks are just powerhouses as a host plant. They host, I think, something like 530 or 34 different caterpillar species. American hornbeam, or also named musclewood. The catkins are eaten by birds, the seeds are eaten by birds. Spicebush, like Juanita was talking about before, again, another powerhouse for migratory birds. And nannyberry, which is a type of viburnum, also really important food resource in the fall for birds. So we're thinking, we need to provide plants that host entire life cycles of pollinators, our lepidopterans, because a lot of times people think about the pollinator garden, they just want to put a flower out there, but that might not be the host plant for that butterfly or that moth that they're trying to attract. So we wanted to make sure that we provide habitat for entire life cycles of plants, and also, food resources for birds, because a lot of times, birds are, like Juanita was saying, birds feed they're young caterpillars, and when their babies are young, then as they become adults and they're getting ready to migrate, they switch to berries. So again, biodiversity is key. And this is Grow Your Roots is our new initiative. We've been focusing really, really heavily on woody plants, but we want to show our herbaceous plants some love too. So last year we started sending Sourland Conservancy members free native plant seeds. We sent I think a mix one time. We sent swamp milkweed and lance leaf coreopsis. And so we're going to do that again, and send not twin leaf. I'm forgetting what plant seed we're sending, but we are sending other wingstem is what we're sending. We're sending wingstem seeds to all SC members for them to grow at home. And we're also doing a winter seed sowing workshop. So participants that sign up for this workshop are provided with seed trays like the one you see in the picture, potting mix, and a variety of native seeds that were collected by our stewardship crew at our restoration sites. And they are going to sprinkle the seeds, learn how to stratify seeds at home. So sprinkle the seeds on the trays, put a little sand on there, and take it home to cold stratify. 50% of whatever grows. So if the whole tray grows 50 plants, 25 of those would come back to the Sourland Conservancy, and they're going to go back into our restoration plantings. And 50% get to go back to the person that participated in it. And they can plant it in their yard, they can give it to their neighbor, they can go plant those plants at a library, but they just can't sell them. Those plants have to go freely back into our community to continue distributing native plants and promoting native plants across the region. So, herbaceous plants and herbaceous native plants can get expensive if you're trying to do a big restoration planting on your property. So that's the number one reason people have contacted me about native plants. They're like, I want to do it, but it's so expensive. So just trying to break down barriers and find ways to get the community involved and engaged and give them that knowledge and empower them to do it themselves. Because if you feel that you're connected to this land, if you understand what's going on and you feel empowered, you're going to go out and do something about it. So our goal for 2021 is to plant 10,000 trees. This is our executive director, Lori Cleveland, getting her hands dirty. This is pre-COVID, but she still gets her hands dirty, gets those trees in the ground, and working hard with us. Another really important thing that we're doing is monitoring our streams. So forest decline is going to have a really big impact on water quality. So we have a NJDEP approved QOP, and it's a collaboration with the Watershed Institute and NJDEP. And we have certified Sourland stream stewards that are going to be collecting habitat and biological data that can be submitted to the Water Quality Exchange Network, which is the biggest repository of stream data in the nation. And we're also working with Dr. Emily Stander at Raritan Valley Community College, and her students are going to collect water chemistry data and analyze the habitat, biological, and chemical data to understand what is happening. So we have some baseline data from our stream stewards from the past few years and before the ash really started to decline, so we can start watching what's happening. We're also monitoring with Raritan Valley Community College professor, Dr. Jay Kelly, for our forest restoration. His lab is going to measure the success of our planting at our fence sites and our tube sites, and comparing both the woody and herbaceous species, and looking at the different types of restoration design. Because as I said earlier, we're doing different things depending on each habitat type that we're working with, or also sometimes it depends on what type of invasive species are there. We're changing what we're doing, and we want to make sure that we're being really effective. Because right now we're just throwing a lot of spaghetti at the wall, or just planting a ton of trees, trying to get ahead of the problem. But I think it's going to be really important that we also look at what we're doing and understand what's being the most effective way of doing this large scale restoration across the entire Sourland. So we're really glad to have Dr. Jay Kelly and Dr. Emily Stander on our side helping us. And as Juanita said, we're going to start working with Washington Crossing Audubon Society, because we really also want to see what's the impacts on bird diversity and density as a result of our restoration work. So we want to look at pre and post treatments, meaning before we planted and after we planted. I've been consulting with Juanita on woody species that are really important specifically for birds, and also talking about developing this training program and managing volunteer groups that conduct these bird surveys at our restoration sites. Because getting trees in the ground is really important, but are we getting the right trees in the ground? Are we protecting them in the right way? Should we be working in a different area? And the only way we're really going to know that is if we collect data. So having these partnerships, whether it's doing our big group planting projects or working with Raritan Valley Community College and Washington Crossing Audubon Society to understand what we're doing, and understand the impact of what we're doing, that's the real ticket. Because once we understand what we're doing and we can see that this is the most effective path, we can replicate that. So some of the biggest challenges we've been having is finding enough locations on public land to plant. We really want to keep on extending our reach and find more connections with public landowners. As my coworker Karina right there in that picture says, teamwork makes the dream work. So the more people we can partner with, the more connections we can build, the more trees we can get in the ground, and the more reforestation we can do. We were really interested in finding funding to help private landowners reforest their lost ash, because like I said, 1/3 of the Sourlands is privately owned. There's just a lot of complications with that, because private landowners could harvest their timber, which would not be great for our reforestation efforts, or they sell their home and the next homeowner comes and cuts it all down. So we need to look into ways of protecting private land and maybe start investigating more about conservation easements. But it's really important that we go and reforest private land as well, not just public land. And we've also found that there's lots and lots and lots of funding for trees, but almost no funding for deer protection or to hire interns to plant trees. We really love doing our big group plantings where we have folks come out and plant with us together. And it's a really effective way to get a lot of trees in the ground in one day. But not every site is appropriate to have public volunteers in. Some areas that our interns have been going have rare and threatened species in there. And so they've learned to tread very carefully and be very conscientious of how they're moving through that space. And it's just not appropriate to have, a big corporate group come out and work in that area. So we definitely need to have a combination of, big public plantings and also specialized planters that really know what they're doing and move through an area with a lot of caution and care and are very respectful of the space. So this is something that we're going to have to continually work on is, finding funding for deer protection and interns. So I wanted to say thank you to our funders. We have our Sourland Conservancy members. You guys are awesome. Your member dollars go to work getting lots of trees in the ground. Private donors that have helped donate for our deer fencing for 2021. One Tree Planted, American Tower, Church and Dwight, and the Gaxatter Foundation. They've all been really wonderful in supporting our program. And this is our project partner page for this year. These are all the groups that we are partnering with. And if your organization or your municipality is in the Sourlands and you're not on here, you let me know, because I want to reach out to them and build a partnership, because together we can do great things. And we all have that same goal of protecting our natural resources. And so whether it's planting trees or creating bird habitat or monitoring water quality, we all at the end had the same goal. So together we're stronger and we can get more done. So that's it. And I'm ready for questions.
If anybody has any questions, feel free to drop them in the Q&A or in the chat at this point, since we've made it through the talk. One of the reasons we like using the Q&A box is that we tend not to lose questions, but since we're down towards the end of the talk, if you want to drop them in the chat, if that's easier, that's fine too.
I was really impressed by that, the Grow Your Roots project, to get a lot of these plants into private people's, even their backyards. As you may know, I'm a volunteer at Bowman's Hill Wildflower Preserve. I'm a naturalist, volunteer naturalist there. And there has been so much excitement this year from people coming to the native plant sale about native plants, even people with small urban backyards, wanting to know if they can grow things in pots just because they want to do their part with whatever space they have available. So it's really wonderful that you're getting it out there to everybody. I really wish you the best of luck with this, because this is, as a Sourland resident, I realize how important this is if we're going to keep the kind of lifestyle in nature that we're used to.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is just making people feel empowered that they can make a difference. A lot of times you feel,
you can't just say, no, there's nothing we can do. There is something we can do. That's what we have to keep in the forefront, I think, and working together towards our common goals in nature, I think, is going to take us a longer way too.
Yes.
Lori Cleveland asked if you could talk more about connecting habitat across New Jersey.
Oh, sure. So connecting habitat across New Jersey is a department with the DEP, and it's a statewide initiative, and they have their own mapping program, so you can check it out go to change.org, CHANJ, and you can look at their web viewer, and on there you can see all these different filters that you can add in, or layers that you can add in. And so what we're focusing on is corridors. And so the corridors are the area that animals can move through. So a lot of this, we're thinking of terrestrial animals. A lot of people like to talk about bobcats. So when animals are migrating through, they need to have certain resources, whether it's cover, they need to have food resources, water resources. And so for us, what we're doing is we're looking at these corridors and seeing if there are areas that we can make a connection between, this core habitat and this core habitat, and then make a corridor going between them to make that connectivity for animals to move through. We're also going to be working with Raritan Headwaters coming up on culvert assessment. So that's aquatic passability and terrestrial passability through culverts. So that's another initiative that we're going to be getting on, because it's really important to have an understanding of what the connectivity between resources for animals are, because if they can't get from one area to another, their populations are going to dwindle. We're going to have a bottleneck issue as far as genetics is concerned. And there might not be enough resources to sustain the populations that are there if they cannot move in between. And so say if Ida comes and knocks down a bunch of trees, the animals that were in that one patch that can no longer travel between core habitats, their resources are gone, and then that whole population dies. So we're really focusing heavily on making sure that we can connect core habitats using change corridors.
Okay, Bob Horgan asked, has professional hunting of deer been considered as they've done at Duke Farms or in Princeton?
So we are working on legislation for commercial deer hunting in the Sourlands. Not that the Conservancy is not hiring professional hunters, but we're promoting legislative and writing that legislation to have commercial deer hunting in the Sourlands. Professional deer hunting is very effective, but it's very also costly. And so, especially if you're also not controlling the deer populations around where you're hiring those professional hunters, it's kind of that source and sink area. So there's a high deer population here and a high deer population here, and then you kill all these deer and the deer just move right in, right? There's no walls keeping them out. So we have to think of a more system-wide approach, and commercial deer hunting, we think is probably the best way to get at that.
And Bob has another question. If you're going to lose 1 million trees, do you have a target number of trees that you'd like to plant?
So this year we are going to be planting 10,000 trees at least in the Sourlands. But that's our organization with our partners. And then our partners are also planting. There's municipalities that are planting. And another thing that we're doing is not just planting, but also putting up larger deer exposures, or those groves. And inside of those groves, seedlings that have already germinated and established their roots, but every time they grow up, they get munched on by deer. They never get any taller than about 6-8 inches. But when you put those groves around them, or put a larger deer exposure around them, and they're released from that deer pressure, they shoot up on their own. So we don't even have to plant 1 million trees, but we have to protect 1 million trees.
Okay.
Jim, I see a question in here that I might be able to answer from David Voorhees, which is, can you explain how spice bush is utilized by birds? Is it the berries or other parts of the plant? The spice bush, I wish you could have seen my slides. My apologies. I don't know what happened. That's never happened before. But the spice bush berries are important to certain migrating birds, particularly thrushes. They really do go looking for those birds, looking for those berries during migration, because they are so high in fat. And there are probably other birds that use them in addition to thrushes. But the spice bush itself, in the Sourlands in particular, because it is would naturally be, if it were allowed to grow to maturity, it would naturally form thickets of undergrowth, of understory plants, low understory plants. They grow about maybe 10 feet tall at the most. And that is the type of habitat that is used by breeding Kentucky warbler, as I mentioned earlier. It's also used by the hooded warbler. It's also used by worm-eating warblers, and they preferentially seek out thick spice bush thickets which grow under canopies. They are canopy dwelling plant, and they will make their nests on or near the ground underneath underneath the spice bush. So it serves as housing and food for birds. And it's the most important understory plant in the Sourlands for these species of birds. Kentucky warblers are practically extirpated from our part of New Jersey. They've got a last stronghold in Baldpate Mountain, as we've talked about that, and that is also under threat. We're worried about connector trails going through some of the last remaining habitat for these warblers. If the quarry plan keeps the present trail system that they're thinking of, which I don't think they will. I don't think we need to panic yet, but we're keeping an eye on that. We don't want to lose any of our birds, and if we can save the forest for them, then I think we're duty bound to do that.
Agreed.
Okay.
I don't see any more questions. Does anyone have a final question or two?
Speak now, or rather right now, type. Okay, well, if we have nothing else, I want to thank you very much, Carolyn. That was a really good presentation, and
Thank you.
really appreciated all that information and all the work and the effort that you and your organization are putting in. It's just fantastic. I think you are the last best hope for the Sourland Forest. Truly, I do. And I hope people here will really think seriously about getting more involved with the planting and some of the other initiatives that you're putting forward. One thing I wanted to mention about deer, it's really interesting that you can get deer at restaurants in New Jersey, and the deer doesn't come from New Jersey. Isn't that ridiculous? You can go to Lambertville Station, have venison, and it comes from out of state because we do not have commercial deer hunting in New Jersey. Got to change that. For
Yeah,
any
that's
deer here,
bonkers.
there should be our own deer, darn it. Okay, everyone. Well, I'll say good night. Thank you very much for joining us tonight, and I hope you will all join us in October for our very special tribute to Hannah Suthers and a really interesting program by Tyler Christensen. So thank you all. Good night.